Hello, this is Jim Palmer, and this video is about cleaning the carburetors on my 1985 Goldwing 1200. It has been off the road for 10 years and it is really gummed up bad. The first thing you do is access the carburetors by removing the air filters. A few shots here. Air filter sits in the frame, and then once we get it taken apart, the air filter will be on the bench. As you can see in this picture, there's all the pieces that make up the air filter. Those have to come out. These are the decorative covers that fit at the bottom of the fairing lowers and cover up the carburetors. They have to come off too. The next thing you have to do is remove the intake runners. They need to come off on both sides. They just give you a little more room around the crash bars when you're pulling the carburetors out. After the throttle and choke are disconnected, just slide it out the left. Takes a little wiggling around, but before you know it, you got them out, and there they are on the floor. So here there's a few shots of the carburetors on the bench. That's from the rear, showing the throttle linkage and the fuel inlets. Here's from the front with the vacuum hose that goes up to the ignition module. Underneath, showing the emissions hose routing. A couple of close-ups of that. All those hoses on this bike were pretty well petrified. I changed everything except for the air hoses. They seem to be okay. The exhaust air hose. Okay, here's a couple shots showing the tubes that go between the carbs and the springs for the throttle linkage. Those are really a bit of a pain to get in and out of there. I found the best tool to use for the springs was just a very long, thin pair of modeling needle nose pliers. You can get a good grip on the spring and then kind of wiggle it around, twist it in there, and you'll get it. So now you're looking at the choke linkage down there in the center. There it is coming apart, just a reference picture for putting it together, and then here's all the pieces that are needed for the choke linkage. Okay, turning the carb rack over, this is what it looked like on the inside of the housing, pretty gunked up. I used a center punch to mark each carb with a number, just a number of dots for each of the carbs. I also did that on the intake runners. It kind of helped to get it put back together without any problems. This is the screwdriver out of the Honda toolkit. Not only is it the correct JIS screwdriver that fits these screws very well, it also gets a great purchase on the screw head so you don't damage them. One of the things I learned about taking this apart was the modern fuels, when it dries out, it leaves a gunk on it that just is really tough, and you can have a lot of trouble taking things apart. But if you use a heat gun, I have a cheap Harbor Freight heat gun, and it will provide a pretty good warming area that makes these screws come apart without too much trouble. Here's carb 1 and 3 off the rack now. Those throttle pistons were really gummed up bad. The heat gun came in handy to loosen those up so we could disassemble them without damage. Again, here's carb 1 and 3 in my teardown tray. Another shot of the same carbs. And here we are looking down on them from the bottom. You can see they're pretty gummed up. So we're going to start actually with the other ones on the other side. Here's 4 and 2. I actually started with carbs 4 and 2. I think 4 was the first one I cleaned. And here it is. It's really a pretty solid piece of gunk. Drilling out the cover for the pilot screw. And then I put a wood screw down into it to get a grab on it, and then grab that screw with a pair of pliers and then just twisted it out. It allowed the pilot screw to be taken out for thorough carb cleaning. Okay, here's the diaphragm. They had shrunk a little bit. It was a challenge getting them back together. There's the jets that have been removed. Okay, there's the first stage of disassembly. You can see the piston looks wet, but it's got actually just residue on it from dried gas. This is taking the float chamber apart, and you can see it's pretty gummed up inside there. And then here's the choke valve that needs to come off. That's that little black piece. Another shot of it where I've got it out now. Okay, here's the carb getting ready to go back into the ultrasonic bath. Here we are in the ultrasonic cleaner. I like to get the water up to about 120 degrees, and I use a solution of deionized water along with a cleaning solution that's I got from Cabela's. It's used for cleaning spent cartridges for reloading ammunition. Okay, here's the parts coming out of the cleaner, and then some of them. You want to squirt down screws with WD-40 right away because they would corrode up. Other than that, parts came out pretty nice. They look really clean. One thing I haven't shown is cleaning the jets. I use steel guitar strings. You get them at a music store. Cost you about $5 for a set. The E string, the smallest one, is about the smallest wire I've been able to find, and they're either 7 or 8 thousandths in diameter, and they'll go down the center of a jet and without damaging the jet. I always run a wire down the jets. It's amazing how you can actually be able to see light through it, and there'll be lacquer that you can see right through. I found out the diaphragms had shrunk a little bit, and they were really a pain to get back in there. I read somewhere that you use Honda handlebar grip cement to hold it in place, and so I just put little dabs around the ring and stuck it down. It seemed to be okay. Who knows what's going to happen if I try to take it apart and do it again. I got the order a little buggered up here, but this is what the carbs look like after they were done put together. Another thing I didn't show you was removing the throttle shaft. You have to drill the crimped end of the screw off and then pull the shaft out, and those need to be cleaned because of the goo that's in there from the dried gas. I found that using red Loctite. I did that on my 450 and held the screws in fine so far at 1100 miles. Um, Again, I'm not going to think about what it means to take it apart. See individual carbs. Now you just got to do it again 3 more times and hope you do it right because there's no going back. These are the tubes that go between the carbs on each side. The top one is the overflow for the float chamber. The middle one is the fuel line, and the bottom one is the vacuum for the air cutoff valve. Here is the plenum for the carb body after it's come out of the ultrasonic cleaner. Gotta love that thing. There's the bottom view of it. Looks like new. Okay, then I put the carbs on it. A lot of fiddling around with the springs and the linkages. I bench sink the carbs to see if I can get them to open as close as I could for each of them. And there it is. There's my fuel line. I had some brass elbows. I made up my own. Had some clamps and some 5.5 millimeter hose. There's the hose on the bottom of it. All the new rubber I put on it. And there it is, a better shot of my fuel hose. Might be asking for trouble there. There you go. I got the top of the plenum on. I installed the intake runners before I put the carbs back in. Also broke the crash bar loose from the left side to give you a little more room. Laid a towel down over the valve cover to protect it. Slid the carbs in part way, hooked up the choke and throttle cables, came back, brought her in all the rest of the way, put the intake runners in on the other side. One of the things that Honda does is they use some adhesive to put the O-rings onto the bottom of the intake runners. I didn't do that, so I wound up using a 1-inch putty knife to hold them in there while I laid them down. It was a little bit of a fiddly job. Other than that, I think it came out pretty good. Okay, that about does it for this session. Next job on the bike is going to be replacing the timing belts. I should get into that next weekend. That would be the 3rd weekend in February, and we'll do another video. Hope you enjoyed it.